Good afternoon, everyone. So let's start with this second panel session of today. Thank you for those who are already here in the room. And before starting inviting the panelists today, as I was briefed and invited, and thank you for AI-NURECC and all the partner organization for this invitation and for keeping the maritime tourism, the cruise sector, and all the waterborne sector as central in the discussion, because it is really important. It's not something to take for granted to keep continuing focusing on this aspect and to try to understand them with the voice of stakeholders, the voice also of people who is working currently into these activities, and possibly with a wider perspective and this opportunity to have people speaking from different countries and from different job position. It's really important to, okay, they already moved to a presentation. Let's go in quick to the topic. I was asked to make a brief introduction on this topic. So I brought here some of the data we were discussing no more than 1 month ago in Dubrovnik in one of our events at Risposte Turismo, that was Adriatic Sea Forum. So in this case, you can see some data and graphic from the ferry traffic, because today we're going to focus in particular on cruise sector and some aspect on the yachting sector and nautical sector, but ferry traffic is really relevant for the area. And as you can see here on the left, our forecast for this year is that the traffic will more or less get back to the value that we had in 2019, so pre-COVID, as the COVID is one of the topic that hopefully we talk this year, and maybe we can forget for the future situation. It was hard work from many stakeholders, but we hope to get to new challenges and new things and priorities on for our activities and commitment. On the left, you can see the map of the lines we drafted, and you can see the lines that are used more often, in particular a vertical area from Venice going to Corfu and going also to this part of the Greek Ionian area, and some horizontal lines, in particular the Ancona split and the Bari Dures and the Bari Albania or Brindisi Albania. But what I would like to show you is if we look instead at the cruise traffic, this cuts some differences, because you can see, let's look at the right. At the right, you can see that 2019 was almost 6 million of cruise passengers in the ports and the cruise ports in the Adriatic, and 2022, 3.6. So it's let's say it's a minus 40% as a traffic in the sport. So the cruise business was one of the more affected from the COVID and from the pandemic. And let me say, one of the first to react to this and react quite quickly to put in work some operation to get that working. I think that if we look at the bars on the left, it's not similar to the entire Med area in this case. So the Med area was just minus 22. So the Adriatic is coming back a little bit slower in cruise tourism in comparison to other areas of the Mediterranean. And that's a thing that should be something we have to consider, not only to see how is going on in our port, in our area, but always to framework and to compare with other areas of the world or the Mediterranean, just to understand if our even path of recovery is the same or in this case is weaker than others. This is the comparison. We try for Adriatic and Ionian together is 3.6 million. And again, it's minus 40%. But if you go on East Med, so East Coastal Med, you can see that 2022 already was at the same level pre-COVID. So it's the 5.5, so 1.6, so almost stable to that. That's because Greece, for example, was working quite quickly in not only recovering, but getting back to those numbers and having some, let's say, a framework of leading city that includes Venice, it includes others that still have to resolve some of the problems in order to benefit from this traction of the cruise tourist that is coming back, let's say, even stronger and with much more knowledge within the sector itself than it was before the COVID. One topic we're going to talk maybe a little bit about seasonality. This is seasonality of cruise traffic in Adriatic, and you can see the season starts quite early, so from April till November. And this is a thing that could be interesting in this particular sector, because you can bring tourists, you can not just bring, okay, we're not talking about goods, but you can let the people discover destinations even in months that normally are not that accessible in the area of the Adriatic, because you travel the Adriatic, you are a stakeholder from the Adriatic to to travel in March or in November from even Venice to Dubrovnik is not that easy, because you got air flight only concentrated in the summer season. So cruise tourism can be an opportunity to discover destinations even not on the peak months. These are the main cruise routes, and you can see here that from 2022, starting to think about 2023. So this year, we got this connection. 2022 almost already concentrated in the middle and southern Adriatic, while 2023, with the kind of recovery of Venice and the reuse of Venice in this even, let's say, fluid situation about the ports, which you have to understand how to use as possible the structure that it has. It started to be involved more the northern part of the Adriatic. So that's important of ports such as Venice and the operation in also other ports like Trieste, Chioggia, and others to then get benefit for the entire Adriatic. Final slide. This is the recovery differentiated by countries. You can see we do expect at 2023 that it gets back to years such as the 2017, let's say. So still we have to recover to get back to the peak of 2019. But the prospect, if you see outgrowth 2021, 22, 23, it's let's say an outlook quite positive for the traffic here in Adriatic. The Adriatic, as you know, we're going to talk later also about nautical. It's the final line. So we mapped more than 340 structure for nautical tourism with almost 80,000 moorings. So that's a huge amount of places to host for boats. And I think for anyone that wants to deep, this is a QR code to download this report in full version. So I finished this quick introduction, and I leave the words because it's well deserved for the panelists who waited till now, and then we're gonna deep also in other questions. So we can move to the slides with the speakers that we have today, and I'm inviting to join me here on the. I don't know what's happening, but okay, I can use the names that I have here. So I'm inviting Elisabetta De Nardo, Vice President Port Development of MC Cruises, Mr. Zoran Martinovski, President of the Prime Blue ESG Institute from North Macedonia, Mr. Antonio D'Amore, Special Commissioner of the Brindisi Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Georgia Hansi, International Center for Black Sea Studies, ICBSS, coordinator of the Cultural Youth and the Black Sea Cruise Projects. And online, we have Mr. Alkes John Corres and Ms. Maria Deligianni from CLIA. Quick applause for all the people who sit together or online. Thank you. I'm inviting everybody to have the headphones, because we're going to have some speech not only in English, but some of them also in Italian for those who are not speaking in Italian. So thank you. I hope the online people is connected. If you want to switch to the video so we can say hello to the people connected online. And I will then invite all of you to briefly have just one line to present what's the role of your activities you're working with, because maybe some of you are not that confident with the International Center of Black Studies already. So just a line to let us know in this situation and occasion of networking. But I will start before the presentation with the first question. So during the first question, you can also briefly introduce your company. So as the topic, hello, ciao Maria, hello, good morning, and good morning to Mr. Alkes John Corres. I hope you can hear us. Yes, very good. Okay, I see from your head shake. Okay, good, very good. The topics we are going to deal in today are quite different, quite connected, but quite different, because the first one is related to the impact of COVID, and the second one on green development. So looking back a little bit more on the future. I will start with the first topic chosen, so the impact of COVID. And if we look back at 5 years ago, even from the numbers that I show you, 2018, we were expecting a 19 of a growth, of an even growing, situation. So it was just 5 years ago. And now it's been the pandemic, and now we are back in a 2023 in which we are expecting growth in those numbers, in cruising, in yachting, in nautical, so coming back. The main question is, how much do you think the priorities of the different sector you are working with had changed a little bit in terms of priorities or the needs of your organization? Because we are, again, in two moments of expected growth, but a bit different, what we were 2018 and 2023. What is it if, because maybe nothing has changed internally your organization or regarding this? I will start with Mr. Nardo talking about the cruise sector. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ευχαριστώ πολύ for inviting me here. Thank you very much. As you said, we should introduce ourselves. For MSC Cruises, a Mediterranean shipping company, we, myself and our colleagues in my division, take care of building new destinations, dealing with national and local public entities to sustainable growth of tourism, and knowing, as you know, that we have big ships with a lot of passengers and guests on board. It's paramount in our sustainability plan to go hand in hand with destinations. So we not only build private islands in Bahamas as we did, or cruise terminals in the home ports, we also try to discover lesser known destinations to distribute our volumes around. We can talk then later about this. So the impact of COVID, as Professor Pavlovich was mentioning in the morning, has been a total catastrophic situation. The tourist sector, as we all know, was the most impacted of all economic sectors. And the losses that were caused by COVID are not recoverable, full stop. There's not a word. We cannot increase our cruise prices on the tickets to recover those losses. So in that moment, when you really think as a ship owner to have the competitive advantage of ships, which are a mobile asset, right? And as a mobile asset, you can move your ships around. So when there's a war in Russia and Ukraine, you can move away from St. Petersburg or from Odessa eventually and Yalta and go somewhere else to other ports. With a pandemic, unfortunately, we didn't have completely lost this competitive advantage. So we found ourselves in a terrible situation, but we learned a lot of lessons out of it. We started to rethink and rework our strategy, and we learned from ourselves that we are much more flexible and readaptable, if I can say this in English, than what we thought about. With the ever-changing protocols that you all know about, we're not going to spend words on that. We worked hand in hand with the governments, and specifically on our health protocols, which were, I'm proud to say, the strongest in the cruise industry. We work closely with Professor Hatzi Christodoulou from the University of Thessaly and other consultants that helped us carving a protocol that really set as a model for the whole industry, and other cruise lines then followed and did a great job to represent a safe way of tourism for everyone, and also to fight the image that people had about some cruise ships lost in Far East in Japan, with a lot of cases at the very beginning, as you may remember. The biggest lesson learned, and I cut short, I promise, is that we learn to work better with the local communities. We like to see this cooperation with the local communities as a puzzle. And as a puzzle, as every puzzle, the puzzle is incomplete if you miss a little block, right? So we dealt with local port authorities, stakeholders like Chamber of Commerce, Board of Tourism, small associations, of course, our tour operators and port agencies, but then also port health, border police, who had to do a lot of the controls when the big ships were arriving, right? And all this made us creating roundtables, each port that we visited in each part of the world as the countries were opening. And these relationships we built are there forever, because maybe some politicians may change, but the people who really actually make the work in the port on the day that the ship arrives for the visit are still there. They're the same, and we have a stronger and stronger relationship because we work together in building something very strong. And this is the best lesson that we take away from this. Of course, the losses are irrecoverable, and many opportunities have been lost for a lot of communities that were begging for us to come back, and which tells me a lot about some communities are complaining about the big ships, but when you don't go there anymore, then they pray for you to go back with this massive cruise ships. At the end of the day, it's all about tourism management, as we heard in the morning. Managing flows, managing tourists is a science. It's not just casual or not thought. So we all need to do our part. And by talking to each other, learning from others' best practices, and putting our cards on the table, the strong points and the weak points, we can only learn from each other to do it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabetta. I will move.
Also wanted to thank all of you who are here in the afternoon. You resisted until the afternoon, so the afternoon is always for the best. Thank you.
And Mr. Vermore, I invite you to join this. I mean, you're coming from the Puglia, from Brindisi Chamber of Commerce. You got cruising as well in up and down, but I would like you to focus on the nautical sector. I mean, your community of operators, what they have learned, if the needs had changed in looking back in 5 years ago, just 5 years ago.
Sì, io parlerò in italiano perché mi trovo meglio. E intanto volevo ringraziare per l'invito, ringraziare il forum e salutare tutti i presenti. Mi ricollego a quello che diceva la collega di MSC. Noi in realtà Brindisi ha vissuto la pandemia anche con un protagonismo particolare. Proprio MSC è stata ospite del nostro porto con 2 o 3 navi che hanno sostato nel porto durante tutto il periodo del blocco pandemico. Quindi in qualche modo abbiamo cercato di dare quel supporto e quel sostegno anche in termini di accoglienza dell'equipaggio che rimaneva a bordo. Sicuramente il settore è molto cambiato, sono cambiate le esigenze, sono cambiate anche le aspettative, non solo dei crocieristi e delle compagnie, ma anche dei cittadini delle città. Diciamo che si è ritornati ad una crescita economica in termini di flussi e di fatturato sul turismo, però non è la stessa che ci si aspetta, cioè non ci sono le stesse aspettative del 2018. Adesso la crescita è più fragile, è più timorosa e soprattutto si scontra anche con delle esigenze nuove legate anche al Green Deal europeo e al bisogno di efficientamento. Dicevo prima che anche i cittadini, le città hanno cambiato il loro atteggiamento nei confronti delle grandi navi, perché si è preso consapevolezza che proprio i porti di attracco, con le dovute eccezioni come possono essere Venezia piuttosto che Dubrovnik, spesso sono delle piattaforme di lancio per visitare il territorio intorno, proprio perché per come è costruito il business delle grandi navi da crociera, loro hanno bisogno di portare i loro ospiti in giro per il territorio, non possono permettersi semplicemente di scalare il porto, perderebbero loro opportunità di guadagno e questa cosa i cittadini l'hanno ben compresa. Quindi la relazione economica tra i porti, tra le città e le grandi compagnie si sta evolvendo in questo senso. Io ritengo ad esempio che le grandi compagnie possano essere sicuramente degli interpreti importanti di quelle che sono le esigenze di infrastrutturazione dei nostri porti. C'è con il PNRR, con la programmazione nazionale italiana, c'è la volontà con il cold ironing di sviluppare, diciamo, una sostenibilità ambientale dei nostri porti, anche perché studi anche recenti dimostrano quanto l'impatto inquinante delle navi sia legato essenzialmente al loro stazionamento in porto. Quindi poter accedere ad una rete elettrica nazionale per alimentare le navi mentre sono in sosta nei nostri porti diventa fondamentale, ma non bastano gli investimenti nazionali o i fondi europei, ci vuole anche una volontà politica che in qualche modo va accompagnata dagli stakeholder, quindi sicuramente dalle Camere di Commercio come interprete istituzionale di quei bisogni, ma poi anche sostenuta ed agevolata, ecco, dalle compagnie che loro per prime devono in qualche modo cercare di uniformare, di informare le comunità locali, ma soprattutto di uniformare poi quelle che sono le infrastrutture portuali anche in paesi diversi e che hanno bisogno invece che le tecnologie, ecco, tra loro si parlino.
Questo è interessante. Sorry, this is interesting, but I would like to ask you if you find any particular differences from cruising also to other sectors like the nautical, this industry. I know Brindisi has a boat show, and it's the activity of nautical. It's really relevant for the Brindisi.
Sicuramente il settore della croceristica è un settore che porta grandi flussi ed ha delle ricadute economiche indirette importanti, soprattutto in termini di servizi, di approvvigionamento sul territorio. La nautica è un'altra cosa, è un settore invece artigianale / industriale che ha delle ricadute anche occupazionali sui territori di impatto nettamente più rilevante. Ma stiamo parlando di mondi nettamente diversi che in qualche modo possono coesistere, perché da una parte la nautica, la cantieristica nautica o in generale la blue economy, perché io poi dico che dalla cantieristica nautica poi possono nascere delle opportunità anche nel settore dell'acquacoltura, della pescicoltura, piuttosto che del turismo di prossimità con imbarcazioni più piccole, più leggere. Però in qualche modo quella crescita infrastrutturale dei nostri porti diventa fondamentale per entrambe. Ma non sono i piccoli player della cantieristica o le piccole comunità locali che in qualche modo in quel settore vedono anche grandi crescite, perché il settore si è sviluppato moltissimo in questi anni, sia con la costruzione che con il refitting che con semplicemente la realizzazione di porticcioli turistici. Però ripeto, non sono i piccoli player che in qualche modo possono incidere a livello di governi sulle dinamiche di investimento. Ecco perché dico, secondo me le camere di commercio, ma le grandi compagnie che siano turistiche, che siano di cargo merci o che siano di trasporto, come posso dire, commerciale in generale, anche di merci, scuse, hanno un grande ruolo in questo, nel cercare di omogeneizzare quelle che sono le esigenze delle città-porto, che oggi in qualche modo, ripeto, con la crescita della consapevolezza in qualche modo subiscono la presenza dei porti all'interno dei loro centri urbani, con quelle che possono essere invece le grandi ricadute che devono però essere anche occupazionali, non solo turistiche, non solo stagionali e non solo indirette.
This open a big challenge, maybe a third topic related to the possibility of being able to be involved in some job position, because sometimes territories in particular, when they are fractionated in different points, are not, they would like to, but they don't have the professional level to service in some area. In particular, for example, I'm thinking in yachting, that it's the next topic. I would like to ask Mr. Martinowski if you see you have to change the microphone.
Thank you.
Two microphones if you want to. Okay. If as you've been involved in different projects in yachting, if you see this sector different looking back at 5 years ago when we were expecting a following year of future growth. Thank you.
Thanks, Antonio, and thanks for the organizers for inviting me on this great event. Since I'm the only participant from North Macedonia, and I would say many of you would be confused, how come myself should be sort of talking about yachting, a landlocked country. So I have to say a few words about my background. Actually, I was a development finance professional working for the World Bank for more than 20 years, actually working for the International Finance Corporation. And I've been involved in financing and advisory projects for the private sector, predominantly in infrastructure development, and as well as in the hotel business, which directly or indirectly were related to yachting and nautical business. I was a country director for Montenegro for more than 10 years, and I've been involved in projects like Porto Montenegro, that some of you might know, Port of Bar, and a couple of high-end hotel developments. Now, when it comes, and in my current capacity, I work closely with a nautical cluster from Tuscany, from Viareggio, Navigo Toscana, which is one of the largest clusters in the nautical sector in Italy. The members include companies like Azimut Benetti, Codecasa, Overmarine, Mangusta, and so on. Now, back to your question. So what is driving the yachting business? I mean, when we look at the sector, we need to differentiate between small yachts, I would say below 24 meters and above 24 meters. And I would say above 34 meters. So yachts and mega yachts. The small yacht segment is stagnating, and predominantly there we have a number of private owners. The new generation is not that keen in owning an asset. They prefer to rent or lease. So which creates a different, I would say, dynamics at the marina level, demand for services at the marina level. Rather than treating these marinas as garages as it used to be. When it comes to the mega yacht business, the trend is going like that. I mean, you go to 𝐼areggio, you go to one of these companies that I mentioned, and if you want to buy a new yacht, you need to wait for at least 3-4 years, meaning that there is a lack of production capacity, which triggered the growth of the refit business. So basically, your shortcut to a new boat is to a refit. So you get an old remorker and you transform it into a yacht. And these capacities for refit in the Mediterranean area are also limited. That business is also growing rapidly, and we have some examples like in Croatia. The German Lürssen opened a new engineering center. Before that, and these are the trends before COVID, and they only accelerated after the COVID. In Montenegro, the Biela shipyard, which is a part of the Porto Montenegro project, was acquired by Damen at the beginning, and in the meantime got sold to the Dubai dry docks. So again, there is a tremendous potential for transformation of industrial sites that exist, across the Mediterranean area, to transform them into refit centers. I'm currently involved in a project in Sardinia, in Portovesme. We spoke with Anthony about it, which is a brownfield investment that includes a smelter, aluminum smelter, a lead and zinc, and coal-fired power plant that needs to be remediated. And we are assisting local entrepreneurs to, I would say, get into the supply chain of these refit companies. Now, just for you to get a feel about how this industry works, at the moment there are like 6,000 mega yachts in the world, of which 70% are in the Mediterranean area. The migration, the seasonal migration from Mediterranean area to Caribbean is declining. So meaning that these boats are staying in the Mediterranean area. Each of these boats on an annual basis spends 10% of its value for various types of services, fuel, maintenance, insurance, and so on. So imagine the economic impact basically of these mega yachts on the ports and marinas which are offering their services. There are environmental issues associated with both, the small recreational boating sector and the mega yachts. But I believe we'll discuss about it.
Talk later, because it's the energy needs for kind of these big ships that they don't have anymore just one pool, but they have many pools. They have many energizing activities. So even it's not easy to plug these mega yachts in all the berths that are because the supply is not enough for the energy needed for letting them in a dock. But I would like to remain 1 second to you, as you have this wider perspective of different area in the world or in the Mediterranean. If you think focusing back on the Adriatic and Ionian area that is characterized, we're speaking about Venice, Dubrovnik, Kotor, this particular destination has some aspects that are related at the Adriatic to be unique, or the trends you are seeing in mega yachts in nautical are similar worldwide?
I would say, this Adriatic Ionian part is unique. I mean, somebody mentioned this morning, the UNESCO sites are...
I'm not challenging about the touristic offer of the destination, just more going into the business characteristics, if they're changing the needs in a way particular here in the Adriatic in comparison to what's happening all over the world, or they are global trends we are.
I can speak from the experience from Montenegro. I mean, what is changing? The mentality is changing. You know, the opportunities have been recognized, you know, way back in 10 to 15 years ago. Montenegro started from a very low base, and today is the premier, and excuse me, my Croatian friends, but really Montenegro made a huge progress when it comes to high-end tourism. Like today in Boka Kotorska, you have more than 15, 20, I believe, 5-star, even 7-star hotel developments. To a large extent, that is related to the growth of the nautical sector, the mega yacht business. In Boka Kotorska, apart from Porto Montenegro, you have Porto Novi, which is one and only resort, which is a 7-star. You have Luštica Bay, which is another Egyptian financed. So again, they were more, I would say, aggressive when it comes to this new projects. You know, they realized, you know, none of these projects are without risks, but at the same time, they realized the enormous potential. And maybe some of you will disagree with me, but from my experience over the past 20 years or so, these high-end tourism developments, in general, they are more conducive to sustainable development than, I would say, a 2 or 3-star, you know, hotel development.
Yeah, it's the value margin created and the possibility to get more money to reinvest on the territory.
This is also related to the changing world. I mean, in this, today's session, when sustainability was discussed, nobody mentioned the new regulation coming from Brussels. Earlier this month, a new corporate directive for sustainability reporting was passed, Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, that imposes sustainability due diligence on companies that have assets, I believe above 20 million euros, revenues above 40 million, and above 250 employees, but not only within the company, but across the value chain. So that means every single participant in a value chain of such an anchor investor would need to report, or would need to comply with these rigid sustainability reporting requirements. Otherwise, access to finance would be prevented. Access to markets, you won't be able to use the services of, for instance, of a port, of a marina, if you don't comply with these requirements, because the marina or the port would need in their sustainability report basically report on your impact, basically on ESG matters.
Yeah, so this going into a final word that this maybe create the Adriatic is unique because you got European countries, but also not European countries, and this is a value that can be I won't say used, but they can be benefited from companies working for the entire area in comparison to others. I don't know, maybe the West Med, who is mainly made of European.
On that, because it's important point. These new EU requirements, they not only apply to EU-based companies, but also to non-EU-based companies, which are having significant business operation within the EU or having, business relations with EU-based companies. So that means the Western Balkans countries, although they are pre-accession countries, would also need to start adopting these ESG practices.
Thank you. I'm moving to Elisabetta before going to Georgia for a next question, asking also to you, as you are operating with a global perspective, if you think that Adriatic and Ionian area has some certain characteristics that make different the trends you are seeing and the one you were mentioning before, or they are global trends. And
so if we talk about a restart post-pandemic, we have to say it's a regular steady growth again. We're back to normal in this region, and actually we bring to this region in 15 different destinations 1.5 million tourists every year. So it's a key destination for us. And with the sustainability commitment that we have, we'll talk about this a little bit later, the micro-regional, so the region within the region, Adriatic and Ionian Seas among, between the East Mediterranean, it's more and more key for the reduction on emissions, right? And reduction of distances. So I would say that what I see growing is not only that we have a lot of countries in such a small region with the diversity of destinations, but we also have a lot of interest from the passengers. The only thing that I was discussing also with Stavros and Georgia and other people in the audience today, very interesting, is how we do together the promotion of lesser known destinations. So maybe it's not topic for today, but we can discuss this another time. But it's growing steadily, more than the other side of the world. Clearly, you know that China is still closed, opening soon, but not yet there. We were strong in Japan, China, Taiwan, etc. This is still a little bit off for us. South America started later, Caribbean started later, as you know. So Mediterranean in general, and of course the micro region within Mediterranean, have been the top class partners that we had during the COVID restart.
Thank you. Thank you, Elisabetta. I will then give the floor to Ms. Georgia Hanzi. I'm sorry. Ms. Hanzi, we were talking about cruising, we were talking yachting, nautical. I would like to hear from you the perspective of the research. Later, we're going to talk about the Black Sea Cruise project, but it's in first round. I would like to ask you from the research perspective of the International Center for Black Sea Studies, if and how the research topic has changed in the last 5 years from your side.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to the organizers. Actually, I feel like, as we say in fisheries, an invasive species here, because I bring the Black Sea knowledge. The Adriatic Ionian is not our main focus of research, but since the morning hearing all the speakers, I realized that we share some common challenges and opportunities. And if I have like 30 seconds to briefly inform you about the Black Sea and why we are here. Actually, COVID, yes, was a challenge for the region. Now the region faces another one due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So we talk, yes, about post-COVID recovery, and I'm hoping that soon we will be able to discuss post-war recovery. The International Center for Black Sea Studies is a research center focusing on the Black Sea, and we are a related body of a larger intergovernmental organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, which actually includes 13 member states from the Black Sea, the Balkans, and the Caucasus area. And our aim as ICBSS is actually to promote knowledge-based policy advocacy. And why am I here today is that because a blue economy that encompasses also the tourism sector is a main priority for the Black Sea countries, as it is, maybe I can say a valid employability generator and gross value added generator for the countries. Aside from the tourism, they mentioned shipping. Shipping industry is very high in the countries of the Black Sea, fisheries, and transport. And for this reason, yes, tourism is one of the coastal and maritime tourism is a priority and a growth generator for the countries of the Black Sea. When it comes to what challenges the COVID brought, apart from the obvious ones as for every country, it actually made the countries realize that the 3S tourism, as we say, sun, sea, sand, is not a sustainable solution. And I know we use a lot the word sustainability, and someone said that it loses its meaning, but for the Black Sea, sustainability is an operative word. And when we say sustainability in the Black Sea, we don't only mean using cotton instead of synthetic, or I don't know, using less water or whatever. It's actual sustainability for the Black Sea, because it is the Black Sea is a dominant, let's say, I don't want to use this word, sea, and because the countries depend on a clean and neutral climate sea, they need to actually work on its sustainability. So apart from the all year-round tourism and exploring the niche markets of tourism, aside from, as I said, the 3 S's, sun, sand, sea, which we actually experienced this here in Corfu. It also raised the question of digitalization. We observed in Armenia some VR applications to adapt to the restrictions of mobility, which was very innovative and very interesting at the moment. And we're hoping that this will develop further. And diversification of the tourism sector. When it comes to the research focus, and I will stop there, as I said, the climate, nature impact stressors for the Black Sea itself, and also human stressors like the unregulated development of tourism, which is very I don't know how to call it, a barrier it's a trend and also a barrier in the Black Sea region. The unregulated development of tourism need to be addressed. So at this moment, these are the focus areas of the research in the region.
If you would select a question, a big question that's still to be answered from the research in the area, what will it be?
Related to what?
What you don't know, what you don't know that you would like to know from the research.
Yes,
now.
What we would know. Actually, what we started, and I will talk later, as you said, and what will be the added value if we actually start developing the cruise sector structurally in the region, not fragmented and not occasionally, let's say, or opportunistic. It's not a nice word, but you know what I mean. But with a framework, with
framework for the area to
what
grow.
would be the added value so that we can start promoting this as an alternative
to say, like the return on investment. If we have to invest in something to make a development, what can be the return for the area? And this can be a question to be addressed. Thank you very much. I will move now to the online panelists, and thank you for your attention. And starting from Mr. Corres, and we haven't touched the topic of the short sea and the ferry topic. I was just briefly talking about the statistics in Adriatic. But it's a key element for this area to be connected, to move around, to transport goods. And here we are in an island without ferry. We cannot have procurement supplies and so on. So it's really relevant. I would like to ask you is the traffic was more resilient for some of its characteristic, or it was just benefiting from a slower airlift because then the air companies couldn't move? So in terms in particular of tourism, do you think that these trends of ferrying growing and be already at the level of before COVID, it's going to continue, or it's a bounce back? It's expected now that the air traffic it's coming back also with a good pace. Thank you. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted. No. Not yet.
How about it now? No.
Yes.
Now you get victory. Okay. Now, on the role of the short sea, let me say a few words about it. Short sea shipping is hugely important in the EU for all its encompassing variants. If I can make an example, if we are calling the motorways as being the arteries of a nation, in the same way, short sea shipping is implementing the same function over water. So it is the intra-community transportation of goods, services, and people, and it is hugely important. Why do we think it is hugely important? It should be by now evident. What is not evident is that we have a big problem with the age of the fleet or the ships that are doing that. The average age of the short sea fleet of the EU is considerably higher than the one we see in the ocean-going vessels. And there are reasons for it. Reasons being, firstly, that these are small ships, smaller ships, which have to cover expenses which are similar to those of the bigger ships. But as a result of their limited cargo carrying capacity, incomes for the shipping companies from the short sea shipping are lower. And when there is lower profitability, the idea of replacing an old ship with a new becomes a problem. I'm not talking about replacing an old ship by a brand new one, a new building. Now that would be a big bet, but it would not be realistic because this can't be done. I'm talking about replacing an old vessel with a less old vessel for a number of years until you're able to make a change again. Now, why is that of general interest, not specific to the operators? The answer is that the benefit from their services applies to the entire EU. And being an EU-wide problem, the EU Commission ought to focus it more carefully and spend time on it. Of course, the fact that there are very few shipyards nowadays in the EU does not help with this. And even the remote thought of having to replace a big section of the aging short sea fleet would cost many billions. That would be business that would have to go abroad to shipyards outside the EU to be in position to cope with the challenge. Now, let me add a small note about the sustainability of the fleet. In old ships, it is not possible to introduce innovative changes, modifications, to comply with environmental legislation. It just doesn't make financial sense. Because if you sell the ship after a while, the money invested in the conversion will be lost. So people are trapped in an area where they cannot really replace the aging fleet, and the other is that they have difficulties in complying with requirements for sustainability. And all this is happening in the EU. It likes to think of itself as a champion in protection of the environment, which is true. But it is a question mark that needs to be addressed. Now, on your question, what has happened exactly with the services of the short sea ships and the cruises, is this that the two, to a certain extent, go together. However, when we're talking about islands, as you correctly mentioned, it is understood that short sea shipping operates whether there are flights from abroad or not to bring in tourists. And that is a different kettle of fish of what we've got with the cruises sector. So the resilience that you have mentioned in your question is there. That's right. The ferries are considerably more resilient in the special circumstances that existed during COVID-19. And the outcome is exactly the outcome one would expect it to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corres. I will, before going to Maria, and I will come back to the connection with your online speakers, to remain just a second for a quick question to Mr. Corres, asking you that we have seen that our Eastern Mediterranean, and you are working a lot in the Eastern Mediterranean, it's experiencing a very strong recovery, not only in cruises, but more in general in tourism, higher than what's happening in the Adriatic and Ionian. So I would ask you if it was underperforming before the COVID, or it benefited from new condition and new things that let the Eastern Mediterranean grow in such way. And then the same question I will address then to Maria.
Well, things are in a constant change. Eastern Mediterranean has benefited from increased activity also of countries like Turkey, for example, who have been looking at cruises more closely, and this has shown into the numbers of people going for this. Also, it has benefited from countries from the Arab world that have chosen to do their holidays in this region, in the Eastern Mediterranean. And in Greece in particular, we have seen this materializing in a way of extraordinary turnovers in islands which have made a name of offering holidays with music, with entertainment, and have built a name around these figures. And these seem to be attracting people from not only from the Arab world, but occasionally from the Far East. Therefore, we don't share exactly in the Eastern Mediterranean the same situation like the one applicable to the rest of the Med. We are a little different. Now, whether it is underperforming or overperforming, I think I'm answering it in a more wide way than perhaps you would have liked me to. But this is what I believe.
Thank you. I'll move now and remain online with a connection, and I move to Ms. Maria Deligianni, National Director of Eastern Mediterranean of 𝐂𝐫𝐲, so Cruise Line International Association, connected from Greece as well. So I will replicate the same question and asking you if it was more underperforming before, overperforming now. You have learned something from the COVID that keep you growing at this pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, and good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for inviting 𝐂𝐫𝐲 to today's event. I really regret I cannot be with you physically in beautiful Corfu, but at least I'm happy that I'm able to join you online and able to convey the main clear messages on the really important topic you are discussing today. A quick introduction to 𝐂𝐫𝐲 in my role. Anthony, as per your request, I am the local representative of 𝐂𝐫𝐲. 𝐂𝐫𝐲 is the Cruise Lines International Association. We are the global trade in the industry association for the cruise business. We represent the cruise lines, and specifically at the moment, we represent 293 cruise ships in all around the world, which actually are 95% of the sector global. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C., in USA, and we have local representatives in all around the world. And I am the local representative in the Eastern Mediterranean region, and I'm based in Athens. Now, Anthony, to your question about the Eastern Med and the pandemic, and how is the traffic now, and if we're talking about a recovery. First, I do believe that the Eastern Mediterranean, even before the pandemic, it experienced a drop in cruise ship arrivals, mostly because of security instability and turbulence in the region, especially in the years between 2015 and 2017. As you know, security is a really high priority for our cruise line members. In commercial shipping, they say safety comes first. For cruising, safety and security, that they come really first. So this is an extremely important element. So from this point of view, now Eastern Med is really recovering. But also, in fact, the pandemic did help a lot this region to grow. It increased the profile of some of the countries in the region, especially Greece, that played a very active role in the restart of the cruise business. As mentioned also, I believe, by Elizabeth and possibly earlier this morning, Greece was one of the first countries to welcome cruise ships globally, imagine in August 2020, so right in the middle of the trial. So obviously this gave a lot of points to Greece, and it helped the growth of the region overall. But of course, as you can imagine, this is not a panacea. This is not everything. In order to keep up the interest of the cruise lines, this is a continuous effort for Greece and for all the economies in the region. And they also need to continuously invest also in this industry as well. I mean, in terms of port infrastructure, or for example, the air flights that play a really crucial role. And I believe that we've seen this also in Greece, a considerable increase in home porting. And also, just to give you a very concrete example, for Greece, last year we had 20% increase of cruise ship calls in comparison to 2019. The increase is huge, if you think about it. And this was also combined by an increase of home porting activities. But as I mentioned, Greece and all of the countries of the Eastern Med, they need to do a great effort in order to keep this interest really high, invest in port infrastructure, also invest in immigration issues, in border guards, because we need this also for crew changes operations or for the embarkation process of third country nationals. And lastly, another point that I believe has helped a lot the Eastern Med to grow is that it is a destination market that has a great potential. And all of the countries of the region, they want more cruise activities. Greece, Cyprus, Turkey, Israel, Egypt. You see that all of them, they are eager to attract more cruise ship vessels and cruise passengers, which has been seen by the cruise lines. And that is why I believe this is another region that we have such a huge increase. And you asked me and you want me to compare this with Adriatic and Ionian. So I was in the Adriatic the last month for the Adriatic Sea Tourism Forum, and I had the chance to speak with many ports from the region. What I got from them is that they are communities that they are indeed welcoming the cruise industry. They do want to thrive. They do want to improve the services they provide to the cruise lines and the passengers, but they are also very protective of their area. So we're talking, especially in Croatia and in Kotor in Montenegro, we're talking about UNESCO World Heritage Sites in almost every port. So these are sensitive ports, smaller ports as well. So I think that they also need to be treated in a different manner. And if you compare the Eastern Med with the Western Med, well, the Western Med is a market that is already very well established. While, as I told you before, in the Eastern Med, I think the cruise lines are seeing a window of opportunity for further growth and for more destinations to visit.
Evkaristo, Maria, grazie. Thank you. I will remain to you, and but with a second question, and we move to the second topic today. So the green development of the sector, and the cruise industry, it's moving fast. We are seeing it, and in a certain way, sometimes even faster than what the ports and the territories are doing. So as now we are talking about green developments, what I think from a researcher perspective was really interesting is that the cruise industry keep the innovation activities, the studies, the research, the testing, and the pilots to let's say cruising hadn't stopped its innovation traction during these 5 years of let's say this pandemic or more or less. So I refer, for example, to the ammonia topic, so the new kind of things that already other sectors aren't yet considering or evaluating. So do you think that cruising is today like leading the way? And as we were mentioning before, for the yachting thing, when a yacht comes, then you can start having more supply of hotels. So let's say being the activator of other sectors. So it's, let's say, pushing other stakeholders to follow, to be more proactive, to invest more in green transition. And if I may say, what are maybe the main outcomes or goals that you as 𝐶LIA are more proud of regarding what the cruise industry is doing?
Thank you for this question. The green transition of the sector never stopped being the #1 priority for the cruise industry, never, not even during the pandemic. Our members never stopped investing in new vessels, new technologies on board. And in fact, during the pandemic, we adopted our sustainability strategy, the 𝐶LIA sustainability strategy, which is comprised of 3 pillars, which explain where is our focus in terms of sustainability and how we as a cruise industry, we understand sustainability. So let me describe to you very briefly these 3 pillars. The first pillar is sustainable transportation. So it has to do with the reduction of ship emissions while the ships operate at sea or when they are at berth. And this has to do with technology related to their propulsion by investing in new ships or new technologies or new alternative fuels. The second pillar is sustainable hospitality services. As we all know, the cruise ships, they are floating hotels. And believe me, you will see on board the cruise ships the latest technology you can imagine. Every possible technology you can imagine that reduces the environmental impact of activities. We excel, especially when it comes to recycling. Cruise ships are using solar panels. We're talking about LED lighting or using cooking oil or food waste to produce energy. Or, for example, using the heat from the engines to have warm water on board. So all these great practices that we follow. And the third pillar of sustainability is sustainable destination stewardship. So what we do vis-a-vis the destinations in order to ensure a balance between the way cruise activities are being developed locally and the locals. So by respecting the locals and how they live. Now, your question is mostly related to the first pillar of sustainability for 𝐶LIA, which is sustainable transportation. And believe me, we are driving this discussion. We have always been driving this discussion. I was living and working in Brussels 10 years ago, and the cruise ships and the cruise lines were the first to invest in scrubbing technology. They were testing this technology at least 5 years already, back in 2013. Also investing in and understanding LNG as well. So today's reality and where is our focus and where we're actually driving developments, first and foremost, shoreside electricity. Wherever we go and we speak about this topic, we highlight the importance of this specific technology. It really concerns us the fact that at the moment, only 29 berths globally have this capability of providing us with shoreside electricity. 11 of these berths are in Europe, while from cruise ship perspective, 81 cruise ships already have this possibility. 83 cruise ships will be retrofitted the years to come, and 45 cruise ships out of the 60 that we have now in order will be able to use this technology. However, as I told you, the ports do not offer this, and it really concerns us because on top of that, we have the European Commission with new regulations requesting us to use as of 2030 shoreside electricity in the TEN-T network, and as of 2035 shoreside electricity in all European ports. So this is a topic where we continuously drive the discussion. And then when it comes to alternative fuels, a lot of discussion is going on. For us, what I want you to keep is that we want the alternative fuels to be viable, available at large scale, and be safe. This is what we need in order to operate. And lastly, Anthony, if you allow me, a last remark, I want to give 2 additional examples with regards to the green transition of the sector, just to show you how complex the cruise business is and how many different activities and initiatives we take to reduce our carbon emissions. So one example is related to the crew transfer. As you know, on a daily basis, we transfer crew from all around the world, crew repatriations, crew transshipments from one ship to another, etc., etc. So at the moment, the cruise lines are asking these companies that are taking care of these crew transfers to find the route that is going to have the smaller amount of carbon emissions. Just to give you another example of what we usually discuss on a daily basis. And I have another one as well. The destination stewardship part that I mentioned at destination level, it also has an environmental element in there to mention. And this is related to the transportation of cruise passengers at the destination. As you know, most of the cases we use the traditional coaches, the 50 seats coaches. But in some destinations, for example, in Dubrovnik, the locals they suggested to the cruise lines, and most of them have accepted this practice, to use larger buses, the ones that are similar to the ones used by in the airport. So the ones that they can accommodate 150 people. So to use these buses to go from the port to the city and back. And in this way, in a way, you reduce emissions and also you improve the traffic from the port to the city and back. So just a few additional examples to give you different flavor from the practices that we're usually discussing when it comes to the green transition of the cruise industry.
Yeah, and in particular, it's not just one fitting solution for every destination, everything, but then you have to adapt, to discuss, to collaborate. And what it comes was from the Adriatic Forum, but also today, it's just this willingness of discuss to cooperate for a better future in this thing, because this is, let's say, a common priorities into not only a green development, but for the development of the sector. I will move now back to the live audience, to the live panelists, and to Ms. Elisabetta De Nardo, and to ask you, as MC Cruises, Kristen, just last week you got a new baby on the fleet, MC 𝐅𝐵𝐵. So it got a lot of innovation, also talking about the green transition. So the first, let's say, part of the question is if you can tell us more about the green characteristic of a real cruise ship operating from the last week. And the second one, if connecting to what Maria was saying, if it's already expressing all its potential, or the things that the ships can do in interaction with the ports, or something it's missing from the ports and from the territories. And the last part, just an addition, I know that MC has a commitment 2030, but also 2050. So it's already looking with these numbers. And let's say, what can be the main obstacle in achieving a target that is 2020?
So it's three questions.
Three questions in one.
How many minutes?
1 minute.
How many minutes? We could talk for hours.
No.
I also brought, I hope you will bear with me. I also brought some figures that I will read, because I don't want to tell you numbers or figures that are wrong. Thanks for the question. We inaugurated another baby in the family, but you know, sustainability is not a finish line, as we said in the morning. It's a continuous path for continuous improvement. So we're proud to have a new ship which is super, super sustainable. But is it the maximum we could do? This is the maximum we could do as of today with the technology available, of course. Let me step back 1 second. First of all, I would like to remind you that as ship owners and maritime operators, because we do tourism, but we're mainly ship owners, of course, we represent all shipping, all maritime sector, 3% of the man-generated emissions in the world. And out of this 3% of all the man-generated emissions, the 3% of this 3% is in the cruise sector. So we represent a very small portion of the global emission. That doesn't mean that we're not daily committed in every department, in every division, in meeting certain goals that we're giving ourselves, even if the regulations are not yet imposing certain standards. So we go beyond those regulations. Our sustainability program, 𝐅𝐵𝐵, MSc 𝐅𝐵𝐵, inaugurated last week in Copenhagen, is one of the milestones. Is based on 4 pillars. Of course, the planet, the 4 Ps we call it, the planet. And I will expand a little bit on this, because the environmental part of the sustainability is the biggest one that concerns all of us. The place and the people, E&P again, which means we're cooperating a lot with the destinations, with the GSCC, Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and Travel Life and other organizations to make sure that we develop a growth which is sustainable, of course, for the destinations, the local communities, the employment that we generate in these places, and of course, sustainable for us as a company, because we need to generate our own, of course, revenues as an operator and create employment, sustainable employment, which involves as well all what comes with inclusion, accessibility, CSR, charity, etc., etc. So this is for us a huge commitment. And then, of course, the last P is the procurement, and this is one of the biggest challenges we're having, because how we procure, our supply chain is changed towards a better sustainability is a huge not only cost in time, research, and money, of course, and people, but it's also not yet there from the counterparts. Now, for what concerns single-use plastics, of course, with the COVID, we had to stop and a little bit and delay a little bit our single-use plastic stoppage, because certain protocols were imposing single-use plastics. We're again restarting sourcing people who and suppliers who are investing in greener trucks, in greener transportation, even greener ferries. It costs a lot. And this is impacting on the final cost, because sustainability, as Professor Pavlovich said in the morning, has a huge cost. And the question back to you and to all of us for the future will be, are tourists, all of us, when we go on vacation, available, ready to, yes, understand and appreciate sustainability, but are we ready to pay more for sustainability? We need to ask ourselves, because I'm the first one getting a low-cost flight without questioning too much sometimes how much they're compensating for those emissions, right? So we're still not there, but we move forward. And with MSc 𝐂𝐕𝐈𝐃, we'll read you some numbers now. We finally have a ship which is LNG powered. For the translators, bear with me, sorry guys. It's liquefied natural gas powered. We also power this ship with bio LNG, and bio LNG comes from the biomasses from agriculture that are transformed and processed. So for the first time last week, from Saint-Nazaire, where the ship was produced and delivered by Chantiers de l'Atlantique, the shipyards, to Copenhagen, we have for the first time in history a zero greenhouse gases emission trip. Sorry for the translators. I hope you can bear with me again. In history. Now, can we operate always on a greenhouse gases zero emissions? Always? No, we can't. Why? Because biofuel is not always available, because LNG is not always available. This ship has it all. We have, as we retrofit, differently than what Mr. Corres was saying, as we retrofit the elderly fleet to shore power connection, exhaust gas cleaning systems, which are the so-called scrubbers, which make that smoke a little bit more yellowish and dense, but people think it's very polluting. In reality, we're cleaning with different systems the smoke. And as we use different fuels for having less emissions, the LNG power ships, of course, are the new generations. I'll tell you a little bit more if you please bear with me. I'll offer you coffee later to stay awake. Thank you again for being here. The emissions intensity of our ship operations in general, I'll give you numbers, sorry if I'm reading, I want to take it right, has been decreased at 33.5% since 2008. So sustainability is not something that we discuss now. We don't only sign LOIs, memorandum of understanding, shaking hands. We do it. We are an active player of our own program, even if we don't publicize this too much. Even if we could do better, and CLIA, as kindly Maria De Liliani was bringing the message, is there also for us to help us in doing this. Sorry, I have the age where I need to start reading a little bit more far away. So achieving, of course, net zero emissions will require more than finding further operational, let's say, standards, like reducing the nautical speeds, shortening the distances. That's why Adriatic and Ionian becomes, Black Sea one day is becoming more and more important for us. But with MSc 𝐂𝐕𝐈𝐃, we basically have, I'll tell you what, Okay, we have a reduction of course, a total elimination of sulfur oxides because we go on liquefying natural gas and the particulates, of course, and we reduce the nitrogen oxides, I'm sorry for the translators, by 85%. We reduce emissions of greenhouse gases up to 20% on a CO2 equivalent basis. But again, LNG is a transition fuel. And I'm sorry for reading again, but I want to make sure that those who take notes take the right notes. It's a transition fuel. So the research, the money we're spending and in cooperation and research and development with the manufacturers, with Shell, Total, Gasum, who's applying to us the biogas, etc., is immense. Why? Because if we don't do it, nobody else will do it for us. So as we move forward to a further step and milestone in emissions, we're going towards these goals that we gave ourselves, actually as a cruise sector and shipping and maritime in general. As you were mentioning, we have certain goals. The 2030 target, 2030 target is an IMO regulated, of course, regulation for emissions reduction, and 2050 to become a net zero emissions operator is even more difficult. The challenges are there because of availability of the biofuels, for example, and other technologies. The shore power is not available in the ports, and I wonder why we do all what we do on our own, but the European ports are not funding yet those funds that the European community has made available to build shore power connections possibilities. So that's a pity because we do our part, but we need to find then the facilities to connect the shore. The challenge will be availability of infrastructures of natural gas and biofuels. And another thing, I would say, our technology in general will move forward, but we need to be talking more and exchanging best practices, but also act. I think the local politicians, as my colleague from Brindisi was saying, there must be a strong engagement. There's still a culture which is too little about sustainability. I would say the challenges will be finding on the other side from the counterparts what we need.
Thank you, Elisabetta. What I can say in this, just to mention, at the port today, we are not ports here speaking with us, that we are seeing some projects. I would say it's a bit late in this, but we are seeing projects coming. Also one in Puglia, also not just for shore powering, but also to produce where you produce the energy, because there are projects of producing energy from the let's say the ocean or the Mediterranean, from the sea, from the waves. So this is the part that's needed. I say it's a bit late to work on this, because then the project should be implemented, put operative, so it will take some years, but something is moving also from the ports and the territory side.
And of course, I didn't mention that all these new generation ships are totally independent from a water generation perspective. So when we visit a Mediterranean destination with the lack of water in the summer, as we all know, we're just self-sufficient. We take the water, we desalinize, I hope this is the word in English, with evaporator and osmosis plants, and we're self-sufficient. So the water we create on board, we even make our own beer because we have our brewery on board. So just to say something funny, the wastewater treatment plants are advanced and of course approved by IMO and all the current regulation. They even go beyond the current regulations. So we filter all the black and gray waters. We're like a self-sufficient independent unit. Do you find the same in your municipalities? In my municipality, maybe not. The waste segregation on board, the training to the environmental officers that we have on board, the education of all the crew members, but also the passengers and all of us as employees as we treat our segregated garbage in the office. It's part of the culture. We need to do on the ships what we want to see ashore in our houses. So there's a lot more that I could talk about how much we do. There's a sustainability report of MSc online that's available for everybody. We publish one every year if you want to read all what we do.
Thank you. Thank you again. I will remain to this number 2050. Like it's a not the middle. I think a long-term perspective, even if we are approaching. So it's less than 30 years. I will ask before to Mr. Martinowski, but then if also Mr. Corres online want to enter it. How much often do you see 2050 in your projects? It's a thing that it's a common thing in investment, or it's a bit too far.
I would say, 2030 as a target is much more present in various projections that I've seen. I believe you're referring to implementation of the SDGs, right?
Yeah, not only the SDG, but just in the project, in the financing, how much do you look to the world that we're going to have in 2050 that is going to be a bit different, also with the benefit of this green transition, or it's something you just look 5 years project, 10 years, but no more because 2050 is too far?
This concept of sustainability cascades basically from the UN SDGs down to specific, I would say, initiatives like the EU Green Deal and so on. I would say, the actual implementation of sustainability agenda is already happening. It has been happening for a while. But somebody mentioned this morning, this is nothing new. Like in my previous job, with the World Bank, at IFC, we used to have internal sustainability standards that we were supposed to apply across the board for every single investment and advisory project that we would be doing. So, but back then, since those clients who could not comply with these rigid requirements had alternative to go to a local bank, or basically I would say projects supported by international development banks were predominantly how would I say used as benchmarks, as a good practice. But now that has changed. Now such alternative does not exist. I mean, as I already said, this is not a question of will, and the concept of ESG finance is different from the concept of corporate social responsibility. Now this is becoming mandatory. You can't go to a bank and take a loan for a project that deals with purchase of a new boat, or building a local infrastructure, or even buying raw materials. So every single participant in that value chain basically would need to comply. Otherwise, they cannot finance their projects, period. And banks, bankers, my colleagues, now they are complaining this additional burden on our, I would say, thresholds. So, well, welcome on board. This is the new reality, and it will not change. This is the new world after the COVID. The new regulation, the role of financial institutions, the behavior of investors. The new generation of investors would simply not invest in projects which are not sustainable, which are not viable on a long term. So, from a risk management perspective, again, it doesn't make sense for you to even think about considering, getting into endeavor which is not sustainable. And I think the discussion here on this forum mostly focused on environmental aspects. We are neglecting the G part, the governance, the good governance, meaning how we govern basically these processes. We also, we need to spend more time discussing the S part, the social part. Somebody mentioned this morning the lack of labor. I mean, well, the way we treat employees, can backfire, right? I mean, if people are not getting appropriate remuneration, well, they would not be involved in that line of business. They would do other things, so they would emigrate, which is a real problem for the Western Balkans countries, but not only for the Western Balkans. It's also a problem as I hear in Croatia, in Bulgaria, and so on. So again, the sustainability as a concept should need to consider, the three pillars basically of it, and that's environment, but also social and governance part.
Thank you very much. Georgia, want to enter the discussion with?
Actually, I wanted to. Actually, I wanted to say a comment, a more general comment with regards to 2030 versus 2050 planning. I think that the COVID pandemic caught us so off guard and shook us to the core that we are still trying to adapt in short and medium term, and it will take us a while to return to longer term planning. And we are still trying to bounce back from what happened 3 years ago. So 250 seems like way ahead and quite a long way. And actually to support and what he mentioned about the lack of workforce, it's a very huge challenge here in Greece. We were discussing with Elisabetta, and the argument is maybe the youngsters mostly don't want to go to this sector because they prefer another way of living, another lifestyle. But from what I hear also from the Black Sea countries, it's as he mentioned, the way we treat these employees, what we offer to them. And since the market has evolved past the pandemic, the market has now new demands from the employees. So it's up to us, let's say, including to reskilling them and upskilling them and offer them the tools to respond to the needs, but also value their offer to.
Yeah, but it's a new equilibrium that should be found within the sector for the external of the sector. But I think today we're going to talk about the green development of the sector.
Yes,
if we talk about job market and these things, I think this can be a topic for an entire day talking. But I do agree with you that it's really a priority for the present and the future, because losing, let's say, capability and knowledge of the people who was inside, it was one of the challenge after the COVID, because many left the tourist sector and the activity. Then this is a challenge to achieve the things, just let's say with juniors and not with people with skill and senior that go outside or look around to other businesses. I will move to Mr. D'Amore for this final round and talking about the green transition. To ask you were talking before of the need of involve the big companies in leading and doing things instead of the small companies. But my question is, as we know, tourism is made from a lot of small companies, really sometimes made of family business. Then sometimes they grow, but sometimes they remain with this dimension because they have to craft their artisanal activity in serving the client and the tourists. So as you are at the perspective of the companies, you as an entrepreneur, as a commissioner of the Chamber of Commerce, the question is, how investing in green development is only a matter of big companies and with enough economic leverage to do part of their business in this? And if medium and small companies are losing a little bit of momentum of being part of this green transformation of the sector?
Allora, faccio un piccolo passo indietro, perché in realtà il discorso è molto, molto, molto complesso, nel senso che io non ho detto che devono investire le grandi imprese, però è un problema di approccio culturale. Cioè, se non si coinvolgono attraverso le grandi imprese le classi politiche e dirigenti dei singoli paesi e attraverso queste i cittadini tutti verso una nuova consapevolezza di un'esigenza di transizione ecologica e di transizione verde, difficilmente si riuscirà a raggiungere il 2050 o il 2100. Le grandi aziende, le grandi compagnie hanno delle ricadute un po' come le università. Io dico sempre che un'università in una città, in un territorio, ha una ricaduta indiretta legata non al numero di laureati che riesce a sfornare, ma a come riesce a coinvolgere il territorio, i cittadini, in un percorso di crescita culturale che è quotidiano, è costante ed è continuo. Non c'è un obiettivo da raggiungere. L'obiettivo si sposta in continuazione con la crescita della città, con il dibattito culturale, con il dibattito scientifico. Le grandi compagnie sono quelle che, a differenza delle piccole, già già investono e già ragionano in termini di ricerca e sviluppo, in termini di non nuovi servizi, ma nuovi approcci nel realizzare il servizio, nell'essere sul mercato. Quello è il compito delle grandi, quando dicevo prima le grandi aziende devono prendere per mano le classi politiche locali, è quello, coinvolgerle in questi processi culturali che guardano al futuro, che guardano a un futuro comune e in qualche modo cercare di renderli partecipi e con loro le comunità locali in quello che è il percorso che si vuole intraprendere. Nella loro attività di investimento in ricerca e sviluppo sono loro che hanno le risorse e possono poi in qualche modo tracciare la linea anche per i piccoli player. Pensare che le grandi compagnie siano una cosa o i piccoli player siano esattamente un'altra e che sia solo una questione di risorse da investire, secondo me è sbagliato. Perché se fosse una questione solo di risorse, in qualche modo si troverebbero a livello di comunità europea, a livello di singoli stati o a livello di Banca Mondiale Internazionale, ma è una questione culturale. Quindi il percorso sicuramente passa dalle risorse, dall'infrastrutturazione, dall'esigenza di accompagnare un'evoluzione infrastrutturale dei porti. Prima facevo riferimento, mi rispondevi, non sempre sui territori ci sono le competenze nella cantieristica e altro per svilupparsi, però le competenze vanno anche di pari passo con quelle che sono le opportunità. Le opportunità legate al New Green Deal, di infrastrutturare i porti, di guardare a nuove fonti di approvvigionamento, di diminuire la conflittualità che c'è oggi tra cittadini e autorità portuali, perché comunque una grande nave o un piccolo traghetto in un porto ha un impatto acustico, ambientale, di traffico, anche di privazione di territorio, perché oggi con i varchi di sicurezza in qualche modo sono pezzi di territorio nelle città che vengono sottratti ai cittadini. Se non c'è un percorso, ripeto, che in qualche modo attraverso un cambio di paradigma culturale veda coinvolti i grandi player che fanno scuola, diventano i professori della classe politica locale e la classe politica locale diventa amplificatore e interprete di quelle che sono le esigenze delle comunità, difficilmente noi raggiungeremo l'obiettivo del 2050.
But let me ask you, but for this cultural change, what can be the target? 2030, or we have to wait for 2050 for this cultural change? Or we should target something more near, maybe 2025, 2 years to work and to see some small steps in this cultural change?
Dipende da quando si inizierà questo percorso di condivisione degli obiettivi e da quando si comincerà questo percorso di condivisione di strategie di ricerca e sviluppo e da quando si vorrà cominciare a coinvolgere i cittadini tutti attraverso a tutti i livelli in un percorso di cambio di paradigma culturale rispetto al problema ambientale ed ecologico. Sicuramente, se io dovessi dire 2030, mi sembra molto molto improbabile. Il 2050 è sicuramente raggiungibile, ma se si parte da questo percorso, ripeto, riuscire a elettrificare le banchine, riuscire ad avere un protocollo tecnico di alimentazione delle grandi navi che poi diventerà in automatico esigenza delle piccole navi per l'alimentazione delle navi in porto durante la sosta, è un problema di risorse che però ci sono, ma è anche un problema di dialogo tra le grandi compagnie e i governi che in qualche modo devono applicare e approcciare questo protocollo unico.
Let me say in this regard, I can mention one project that it's for example, a healing project, a cooperation project that is connected with the ports, with finding common solutions. So some projects, some ideas, are already active, and I know that the work that, for example, 𝐂𝐲𝐈 is doing, the Focus the Summit they are doing. So some activities in this regard, we can look with
esattamente quello, il percorso che io immagino.
I will go with the final question, talking now about talking back about the case of Black Sea, because you've been working on small boating. So my question and curiosity was how it matched the opportunity and possibilities that the challenges in fostering small scale cruising in comparison to, let's say, the business, and now it's more connected to economies of scale and to organize the logistics and everything in a certain way.
I feel like the devil's advocate here, arguing in favor of a smaller scale, where my fellow panelists are arguing in favor of larger scale. But as you said, one side.
I'm not let's say a lawyer, and other than we were focusing on this because when you see larger ships, and then normally you focus on this, and this happens everywhere. But
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I would actually say that, as you said earlier, one size fits all policy doesn't apply even to the cruise sector. And building on this notion, we had to adapt to what the Black Sea needs, let's say, demands based on socioeconomic aspects and based also on the morphology of the coast. So we launched this very small project. It was 2 years, funded by the European Commission, as a pre-feasibility assessment, let's say, to see actually what is the value or what is the potential better of the smaller scale boating in the Black Sea, where although it is a tourism destination in the uprising, in pro-COVID numbers, according to the UN WTO, it received 13% of Europe's international travels and 10% globally. So we see there is potential in the region, while it remains untapped in terms of cruising, of the cruising sector. So we wanted to explore what is the potential of the smaller scale, because the region has many smaller ports and many marinas. So there is some basic infrastructure available.
Can I ask you the smaller scale, what dimension it is in terms of passengers or dimension of tonnage? Or tonnage?
These numbers are not my field. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I cannot.
Just understand what is small scale for you.
Meter vessels is
100 meter.
Yes, it's 100. It's a lot, right? Okay, yachts and smaller boats, let's say.
Okay.
Because there are already smaller ports and marinas in the Black Sea countries available, we realized that a smaller scale has greater potential, and if planned properly, can bring a better value to the local communities by also preserving the natural and local ecosystems. Like we mentioned before, it is important to also preserve what cultural heritage already exists in these destinations. And we saw that there is a potential for the smaller scale as opposed to the larger scale that may demand larger investments, a larger work when it comes to infrastructure to support the larger scale cruising. At the same time, there are challenges. There are challenges of connectivity, mentioned also by Professor Delgiani and Elisabetta. It's not easy to reach the Black Sea countries. It is not easy to transport the guests so that they can embark on some shorter smaller scale cruising. There is lack of investments, and this is what we are trying to do, to actually raise awareness about the Black Sea's potential also to attract investments. And more importantly, what we need also to tackle upon is mentioned by all the panelists, coordination among all involved stakeholders. It is not only a matter of business, it is a matter of local communities, a matter of policy stakeholders. And what we are trying to do as ICBSS, as CPMR, and what AI-NURECC, the project that brought us all here, does is bring this gap closer and bring all these stakeholders at the same table and discuss and raise awareness. I don't know how this will, because we always need to address the elephant in the room when it comes to the Black Sea, because at the moment, I don't think any cruise activities possible in the
there's
sea.
also technical limits connected to the bridge to enter the Black Sea. That's currently, it's a problem for large ships. So in this regard, but I don't want to go too technical, but just want to have some elements. And before closing the session, I would ask to just to the online panelists, if you have before a final wrap up, if you have to choose 3 keywords for a bright future for the Adriatic, even if you are from outside the Adriatic currently, which ones and why? Just three keywords that you would like to choose. Maria.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. First, I would say growth, because we do believe that the Adriatic region has great potential for further growth. Secondly, I would say sustainability, because as we mentioned, this is a region with a lot of culture, which we need to preserve. So we need to make sure that this growth takes place in a sustainable manner. And lastly, I would say cooperation, because this is in fact the only way forward. We need to work all together, the cruise lines, the ports, the governments, the local authorities, in order to make this happen.
And then moving to Mr. Corres. Just three keywords.
Okay. Passenger safety, environmental awareness, and realization of our priorities.
Very good, very good. Thank you for this. So all of these three topics will be can be deepened and open to further possibilities, and then maybe be topics for the next forum we have. And before leaving the words to Claudia for the closing words, just let me add just one single word, because you were mentioning 3S like sun, sand, and sea. You were mentioning 2P like from the 4P. Okay, just me add another P, just connecting back to the Black Sea and the area, as we are stakeholder from the region. It's a parenthesis, not on the topics on this. Just add me peace as a target, a priority for the next future, because this is connected to the possibility of moving, of also looking at not only at the green development, but the development of the area with a more, let's say, sustainable and stable plan for the future. So let's just add this parenthesis in this, but we are talking about Black Seas and this area that have been affected. We are talking about also St. Petersburg and also other ports that are now missing in the global geography of tourism. So let me add just this wish for the future, and maybe not just for 2030, but even earlier and earlier. Thank you. And now I'll leave the word for the closing moment of this session. And I thank the panelists here. Thank you very much. I think for the closing word, we can leave the words. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Just sorry if somebody's leave. Just if you have any question from the public, I start to
Microphone.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned the Black Sea a lot. I'll focus on the Adriatic Ionian. That is the focus of AI-NURECC Plus and today's high-level conference. I was really impressed and inspired as well by all the speakers' interventions. I'd like to ask Ms. DeNardo something, since I represent the regional authorities, and we have a question on how to attract big companies to our territory. So, for instance, let's say that the member of ours, the CPMR, that means a region from the Adriatic Ionian macro-region strategy, wants to be part of an itinerary of more of large or smaller cruisers. Also, given the fact that this year is the European Year of Skills. Last year it was the European Year of Youth. I don't know if we mentioned it. And this year is of skills. So let's say we also have elections in some countries. So I want to to animate a debate with local stakeholders, with citizens, to show them that we can attract crews to our region, to our cities. What could be the steps that we could follow to have a debate with cruise companies to show them the challenges, the possibilities, the opportunities, but also the risks, so that we avoid over tourism and so on? And if your company and other cruise companies have, let's say, a modus operandi or a manual of how they attract local societies and local and regional authorities, to exchange with them to see how they could plan for future. Thank you.
That's an interesting question. It's somehow related to the sustainability, because we're looking for more destinations in a continuous search for new destinations where we can spread our growing capacity around, so that we don't overflow the more known destinations. Of course, again, I repeat, we are ship owners, so we have a mobile asset. So we localize our assets wherever our final client, which is also your client as the destination, wants to go. So as a source market, we are a little bit more limited, because we go where the low-cost airlines are taking people, where it's possible to drive through, etc. And as a transit destination that we visit, of course, we want to go where our guests want to go, and our guests want to go normally to the more known destinations. So how do we engage the lesser known destinations so that we also create somehow a new market for them, a new tourist? And believe me, Board of Tourism, I'm always happy to receive a cruise vessel, because it generates, in any case, an economic impact, as long as it's sustainable growth. We just call them up. We just say, hey guys, do you have anyone interested in growing up with us, in welcoming a ship, and which size can you have? Which reception capacity do you have? And if you don't have, what do we need? Which kind of buses, guides, which attractions do you have? And so we start sitting together. And this is also what CLIA is helping us to do, because we cannot be everywhere every day. But what is very, very important, Stavros, is what Alicia was talking about in the morning. Of course, with the spirit of a younger generation that can also teach us something. Authenticity. Guys, every new destination needs to remember what is their own DNA. Don't pretend, if I imagine to talk to a destination representative, don't pretend to be something else. Don't pretend to sell something that all the others have. If you have one little thing that you're strong and proud of, that little thing, it can also be some housing up in a mountain where you have real food prepared by the hand of the granny over there. It's authentic and it's possible. Now, for a bigger scale cruising, clearly, this is more difficult to achieve in terms of bigger numbers to fulfill, to show this attraction of the place. For the smaller case, it's easier because of simple numbers, right? But let's not give up to the idea of creating these destinations. Talking together, having this dialogue on authenticity and what we need is key. But don't pretend as a destination to be what the bigger scale cruising want. No, remain yourself, and tourists will come, because that's what people are more and more looking for, the local experience, the being naturally, authentically local. I want to add one thing, maybe for those who may not know, because we don't talk about this, about animal protection. A month ago, we took a strong decision in our company. We started eliminating slowly, because many tours are already booked and paid for, eliminating the tours with animals involved. So there's no more, in future, there will be no more horseback riding. There will be no more camel or falcon interactions. There will be no more swimming with the dolphins, whale watching from close, etc. This will impact for us tremendously, because not only we will lose 10 million euro per year in tours, and tours, shore excursions are the second source of revenue for our business after the cruise ticket. Let's bear in mind. But also there are families, and MSC is famous for the families cruising and multi-generational cruising, that have decided to cancel cruises with us if we don't offer these tours anymore. So the massive decision that our chairman, our family, who, as you know, Mediterranean Shipping Company is a family-owned company, is taking, is to give up to a share, market share, and a lot of money, sorry to say, for a decision that is clearly part of our sustainable path. So we're not only talking, I really want to say we're doing whatever we can still remaining competitive as a kind of vacation, but it's a strong loss related to this. We don't say too much because it's not nice to talk about this, but since we had a full day together and we can have more later on around the table and a glass of wine, I strongly believe we should talk more about this. Sorry if I took a little bit more of your time.
So,
Anthony,
Anthony, I have one question as well for Elizabeth. Sorry, Anthony. Sorry, guys. So since I come from the Chamber of Commerce, so I'd like to have one question regarding the businesses. So you just launched last week the new boat, and what do you compare the ROI of that boat compared to the other boat if you are doing on the old-fashioned way?
In the old times, when I was working for another cruise line, so we talk about early thousands. I'm an older I'm an older member of this society. The ROI, so the return on investment, or the so-called RR, payback time, etc., was super high, because it was the booming time of the cruises, where a big asset like $500 million investment would have been recovered in 4 to 6 years. It's an incredible return for a business if you compare it to any other industrial asset investment, capital investment. Nowadays, this is more than, the payback period is more than duplicated, triplicated. Why? Because whatever investment we're taking, and sustainability, let me say, is the biggest part of it in terms of additional costs. We cannot reflect it in our ticket price, because in the meantime, the war, for example, has impacted my electricity bills and gas bills, for example, all transportation, restaurants, the chicken in the supermarket has been impacted. I pay a lot more. My salary hasn't grown that much to cover that. So how can we pretend, since holidays and vacation are the last of the needs for a family, imagine a normal family, a standard family, how can we pretend to, to increase the price of the tickets? So we're reducing on our margins, and clearly the ROI is less attractive than in the past.
So that was my next question, but you answered it before with the animals regarding who will pay these sustainable things, but obviously
it's a loss.
Yes,
I
know. Okay, thank you. And one more thing for the audience, I think that we are now MSc about the program, which will have something with our young. So I hope we'll find and sign the cooperation between each others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for resisting until this time. We're available for any questions later on.
I just wanted to comment basically on this question. We are going through a major change, and there will be winners and losers. This reminds me of period 20 years ago when the world was going through from analog to digital, and you remember companies like Kodak, Olivetti, that IBM. They are emerging players, and who will represent a major threat to the established players. Electrification, renewables, and so on. There will be new kids on the block who will have an opportunity really to be disruptive factors on the market. And we're already seeing such an examples in other industries. In Croatia, you have Rimac cars. Out of the blue, now you have one of the leading, I would say, fastest growing companies in the automotive sector. In Slovenia, before, I don't know if you know about a company called Pipistrel, the single largest producer of electric planes in the world. Again, in the nautical business, I'm not familiar of that disruption, but I wouldn't be surprised. So yes, it's not only the technology; it's the business models that need to be, revisited for the companies to stay competitive.
Sorry, I have just a couple of points to share. First of all, a huge thank you to the speakers from this morning, from this afternoon, on behalf of the Forum of Adriatic and Ionian Chambers of Commerce and the AI-NURECC Plus Initiative. We will share a full report of what has been said today. We will share the PowerPoint presentation for the ones who presented. On our website, on ForumIC website, but also on the brand new AI-NURECC Plus website that you can reach via 𝐼NURECC.eu. It's all new, so go take a look. Also, thank you to the interpreters who did an amazing job. Thank you very much for your great work. Just for the on-site participants, we remind you that we have been kindly invited by the Corfu Chamber of Commerce to attend a guided tour to the old town. And we have a pickup waiting for us at 6 p.m. in front of this hotel. So be ready for 6 p.m. And after that, we are also being invited by the Corfu Chamber to attend a dinner at 8:30 in the city center. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but we just sent you an email, a very much detailed email. Lastly, tomorrow we will have at 𝐷𝐷𝐷 Hotel the final conference of a European project, Centaur, which is linked to the topics that we addressed today. We supported through this European project 68, if I'm not wrong, SMEs from around Europe and beyond, actually, in order to help them to implement a more circular business for their activities. So that directly connects with what we heard today, so involving also society. So we will directly hear from entrepreneurs who are, going through this path towards a more circular and green economy. So you're all kindly invited to attend also this event, which will take place at 𝐷𝐷𝐷 Hotel at 9:30 tomorrow morning. And that's it. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.